I noticed during the Pursuer video that I forgot to do a fundamental video. A lot of Pursuer's gameplay is being good with the fundamentals, given that he's a chaser. He relies more on being able to catch up than using his abilities like a killer such as Artful. If you want to win your games more consistently, this tutorial will be your key to doing that. Dive Death is incredibly basic fundamental mechanics. There's really only two, though one could argue that looping is a fundamental. And while I don't believe that, I understand that it is pretty important to know. The asymmetrical definition of looping is running around an object. During this, you should keep your corners tight and use check spots to your advantage. If you don't know what a check spot is, it's simply a position where you can see all the places a killer can flank you from. Most objects you can look over, but some have the vertical view blocked, so a place to look around those objects is necessary. Now to get to the first mechanic that I actually believe is a mechanic, stamina management. Firstly, with basically any video saying how to manage stamina, never let your stamina reach 0, ever, and never hit max stamina when you're being chased. When a killer attempts to reset chase, that's an exception to the max stamina rule. While you're in chase, you should follow a few tips. The first two I said are the most important ones. There are 3 others though. First, do not take your camera off the killer unless you believe it'll make your pathing better. Though, with how much you can zoom out and die of death, I doubt you'll need to do this unless you're running through something. Secondly, walk when the killer does. It's simple. Regenerate your stamina with them. If the killer is close, expend a little more stamina to gain distance. The exception to this rule is if it breaks the max stamina rule, in which you should fully begin running. Thirdly, utilize damage boosts as much as possible. Whenever you get hit by most things, you get a small speed boost for a short time. It's better to use this than juking, as more often than not, you'll gain more distance and the stamina advantage as the killer has to close that distance. There's also a variation of damage boosting called juke boosting, where you run in the direction of the killer instead of away from them. As with all jukes, this has very killer base potential. Be careful with damage boosting, however, because killers can predict that you'll try to do this, and instead of hitting you, they'll recover their stamina instead. In that case, rely on juking a little more, though the killer can do the same thing there, so learn to read your killer. Pathing is much less simple, and a lot of these will go hand in hand with stamina management. I'll break down pathing into 3 situations: pathing when getting chased, pathing when you are chasing, and pathing against a stunned killer. Pathing when you're being chased is the simplest thing to do. Keep tight corners and don't run into dead zones, places where the killer can easily corner you, and always go the opposite way of the killer. Also remember to always move in reaction to the killer. There's a reason the killer begins chase and not you. This is especially important when you're cornered. If you move first, the killer can corner you easily and you lose all the advantage you might have had. Pathing when you are chasing might be one of the hardest things to pull off in this game. Just like pathing when you're in chase, keep tight corners. However, you should always be moving in a way that cuts a civilian off. If a civilian took a bad path around a corner and started running to a different path, instead of chasing them outright, run to beat them to wherever they're trying to go. If they see this and juke around to another path, just continue doing that until they end up putting themselves into a corner, in which case all you do is stand still and regain your stamina. This sounds easier on paper than it is in practice, though with enough practice, it becomes more muscle memory than actual thought. When I say stunned killer, I actually mean whenever the killer is just forced to stand still for a little bit. Think of an actual stun, the killer getting ragdolled from a banana, or any end-lag moves the killer has. How you path whenever the killer is stunned should be to another area of the map. You lose the advantage of having the killer stop for a moment if you don't do anything with it. Say you stun the killer with a revolver up close. If you decide to run past the killer instead of away, you actually lose stamina and will likely die because of it. However, if getting to another area of the map requires you to run past the killer, then just make your way to a point where the killer has to run the most distance to catch up to you. Basically, just run to the opposite side of a loop. Say in glass houses with that long wall loop, if the killer is stunned at a far edge of the wall, run to the other edge and wait there. That is everything you need to know. That's all this tutorial was. It's very simple. Make sure to like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you want to see more of my content, join my Discord if you want to be pinged whenever I upload something, and most importantly, have a Merry Christmas.